Hello, everyone. I'm Dino-Ray Ramos. I'm an editor here at Deadline, and I am joined with Black AF showrunner, writer, director, and Kenya Barris, and director, writer, actress Rashida Jones for another SAG Conversations at Home. Thank y'all for joining us. And
thanks for having us.
Yes, and Kenya is off in a tropical environment.
Still in Fiji.
I'm in cool.
You're just like kind of basking in the sun. But I just want to say first, congratulations on a season 2 renewal. Come through season 2. I'm so excited. So in Black AF, you both take on many roles. You wearing many hats while you're acting, you're writing, show running, directing. With juggling all of, how do you juggle all of that, and how do you just even begin to navigate, being in so many roles with this show? Kenya, we could start with you, and then we could go to Rashida.
I got through it because of Rashida Jones. I had never, it was one of the reasons I was so happy. I had never sort of directed myself. I never acted. You know what I'm saying? And so the idea, like, Rashida was super patient and with me and sort of got me through things. I also asked for a playback monitor, which everyone was really happy about, because I wanted to see everything I shot. I wanted to see it immediately over. But that was that was the biggest challenge, was the idea of, Rashida is, and everyone is used to sort of understanding the process. I was not familiar with the process, so having to sort of go back and see myself was, I think, the biggest hurdle. But once I got sort of comfortable, that was easier. I think the hardest thing for me was, I still have run a company, and Rashida and I still write. And so sort of, I didn't realize how time consuming acting was and how much you have to sort of focus. So really legitimately just putting that effort to it was the hardest thing. But I definitely, it helped having a partner who had done all this stuff before, things like that. So there were some things that were baked in that made it a little easier for me.
Mm-hmm. And Rashida?
Well, I do think that there's some synergy. It's not like, I had to act on one show, produce on a different show, and then direct on a third show at the same time. You kind of show up to set, your lines, you kind of know your co-stars, you've maybe had a table read, and you're like, let me just see if this is going to work. But I think because I was part of the process of building the environment and the tone and the characters, it was actually much easier to land in the position of being an actress, because I had so much context already.
Also, the thing that she doesn't get is like acting coach, because I would say stuff and she'd say, no one understands anything you just said. Nothing you said, anyone understands. You're mumbling. This is all wrong. Just do it again.
You are mumbles. You're definitely Mumbles McGee. We got you out of it a little bit. It's like the primary thing that has to be right is that people have to know what you're saying first.
It helps. So when the series launched on Netflix, people were loving this fresh comedic take, but at the same time, it explored these preconceived notions of race, culture, money, and fame. There were a lot of comparisons to Curb Your Enthusiasm. But with this show, it is a totally different creature. It's something that I personally haven't seen, and I think a lot of people haven't seen. Were there topics that you really wanted to lean into when it came to this show? And besides that, were there topics that you were apprehensive or are shying away from?
I think there's a million things. We always say, like, we just touched the surface. There was so much stuff we wanted to talk about. You know what I'm saying? I think that was the nature of kind of the show. And I think in the environment we're in now, I just was talking to someone, if the show came out today, it would have 100 Rotten Tomatoes. Some of the stuff that we were talking about in Doug and other shows, and just being able to be more honest. And I think that was the thing that I really appreciated, and why I wanted, Rashida to be my partner on this, because as a writer, like, we have not got to see a lot of black satire, at least on television. You know what I'm saying? And I think that was the interesting part of being able to do this show, is that at its core, it's satirical. You know what I'm saying? But it's satire about really real things. And I think that was something that I was really excited, and I'm even more excited to come back and do again, is that I think it actually helps to sort of expand the conversation when you can do it satirically, but the difference in being Black in America is our satire is grounded in real shit. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think the centerpiece of the show is a real individual that's grappling with his Blackness, with his success, with the constraints of his success and the freedom of his success, and then how that impacts his family. And I think from that, that's Kenya's real life and the real questions that he's asking in his own life. And then from there, it felt like there was so much opportunity to talk about issues of the moment and how they impact his family, because, obviously, regardless of what age you are and what background you are, if you're Black in this country right now, even before a lot of people realized it 5 weeks ago, there's been problems for a very long time. And it's had a huge impact on being Black in America. So, there's kind of no better time for people to watch something about that. And hopefully in a way that's like, there's a lot of stuff that's really hard to talk about. And with the show, like, because we're sort of very open and honest and it's funny, I hope that it hits people. It helps
people. And the characters
absorb.
are purposely and surgically in some aspects flawed. You know what I'm saying? Like the notion of, some of the things, there's a great moment that I always laugh at is Rashida's character is putting swag bags together for the kids. And I'm like, I said something about like, are these glass polarized Ray-Bans? And she looks, and this is all improv, and she's like, yeah, you don't want your kids to have stuff going on with their kids' eyes. You don't want, like, it's a character flaw in that we're chasing what we think we should do as a couple. We think that we're this couple, we need to have the swag bag because we've been to those parties where kids have swag bags. We have to go because we're Black. We have to go even extra hard. You know what I'm saying? But the notion of it is, it's a little scary because, you know what I'm saying? Like the ideas of like going broke, you know what I'm saying? And I think that the notions of, that's the reason I like the format that we did the show in, is that there's a lots of improv that happen in terms of, what you are experiencing, and it makes you really feel like these characters are real people in some aspects. And I think that to me is why I really feel like this was different than anything I've ever worked on.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, if this like premiered today or like a couple weeks ago or in this environment.
Or anytime between now and 5 weeks ago.
Yeah.
103 on Rotten Tomatoes.
It would definitely. Well, have you heard any like kind of when it first launched? How has the response been? Has it been different from when it first launched to have people discovering it now? Bring up a lot of hard to talk about topics for certain people, but now I think people are beginning to be more open and beginning to have these hard conversations. But have you seen kind of a Black AF effect? A Black effect, you get it?
Do you don't like that one?
You could use it. It's on the house.
Okay, thank you. First one's free.
I definitely have, if I could be honest. I think that, even before now, I think that one thing, I would sort of, ongoing joke would be, Rashida's very good at PR and sort of like, and I would sort of, I just say anything because I don't have any training and I just get myself in trouble. And I'm like, I'm going to speak up. She's like, no, please don't have my back. Don't have my back. No, I have your back. Please don't have my back. At the idea of like, the first, day or two it came out, it was, and she handled it with such amazing grace. It was like, she was getting spit roasted, she was getting spit roasted on for not being Black enough or this or that, or not being a real Black woman. And it was literally a class in sort of how the world works. She was like, let it play out. And literally we saw within the day, the internet started eating on itself and eating upon itself. And then, it was all of a sudden, it was like, no, not only is she this, she's the perfect woman for this. and she's just as black as Barack Obama. And it just was like, it was very interesting to sort of like, I was one of the reasons I said that I really enjoyed the show is it's the most polarizing thing that I've ever done. But in it being polarized, it started a conversation like nothing else I've ever seen, because it actually caused people to talk, which I think is what art is supposed to. And in people talking, you saw the conversation they have, you saw it start to migrate and transform. And it was really interesting. I can't even imagine now. I haven't gone back and checked recently, but I would imagine I saw it on a ton of protesters' t-shirts. I saw it as, signs that were made, and, it was really humbling.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that for me, it reminded me of my relationship with my career. And I feel like, as a proud member of SAG for 20 years, I just remember the beginning of my career, moving out to LA and auditioning, and, so much is determined for you. And I think that people still miss that fact when it comes to acting. Like, in terms of what roles you are cast as, you have so little control of the opportunities until if you're lucky, way later in your career. So this is probably the first thing, in a way, where like Kenya came to me and said, I want you to play this part. And I got to be like, oh my God, I've never been offered a part like this. I've never had the opportunity to play this version of myself, because you walk in, people decide what you look like and how they want you to be on screen. And it's not anything I like, to be honest. I mean, I don't feel like until now I've really had an opportunity to be, to really be the Black woman that I am. And I did my best at times to try, like, if I had any creative input, like to fill out, my storyline or my past or my family or whatever it was. But this is the first time really that I've gotten to be like, oh my God, I can be this full version of myself. And Kenya gave me the opportunity to do that. So like, as an actress, I have to say thank you, because even if people on the outside are like, I didn't know she was Black, like, you did, Kenya. You knew I was Black, and you gave me an opportunity to show that.
Black Panther Black, and it kind of gets a little scary. Like, but it's interesting to me when I look at, the civil rights movement, for instance. You look at some of the greatest, figures in the civil rights movement were biracial. Some of the leaders of it, and it was a time when that wasn't something we were talking about because we wanted numbers. And it was like a really amazing time within culture. We were all this, and then all of a sudden, I think that sometimes we allow ourselves within culture to fall for divisive things that start to sort of like, how do we sort of think? And it was one of the interesting things about this is that, I really saw, there were moments where it was, Rashida went back and she was like, let's rewrite this because I think we should talk about Venus Hottentot. And I'm like, the notion of exploring the whole journey of who we are within this, and not just, I'm talking about in terms of as an actress, there's no one on the planet who could have done this the way Rashida did it. No one. I feel like because it was a very specific, to be able to write, to be able to direct, to be able to also understand what it's like to be a biracial character, which she was, but also one of the things that I, got a lot of understanding for, like, there's not a lot of, if you're Black in this country, there's not a lot of second generation, people who've been second generation successful, like Rashida, I happen to work with Tracy, like, in terms of the idea of like how it influenced the way we talk to the kids and what their experience was, like my kids are experiencing something that I can't really talk about because I never experienced it, and sort of have that influence there, and even how she talked to them as a mom. She was one of the few, my wife came in and was talking about how she, was talking about her performance as a mom, and she said she feels like a mom. Like she talks to the kids like we talk to our kids, and there's a version of understanding they're not Black kids from the 1960s. They're Black kids in 2020 who have come up with parents who are both successful and are experiencing their Blackness for sure, but in a different way. And the way that you speak to them, there's a certain privilege that we want them to have. we want them to sort of say, you have a voice. You know what I'm saying? We want them to sort of like, there's something that's a new form of Black parenting. And you could see it come out in who she was in a very special way. And it helped me too, because I feel like I'm a bad dad, but I feel like it helped me sort of feel like I'm a dad. And I think I'm there and I'm present and I'm trying to do what I can. And that's kind of erases the bad part a little bit.
Well, like speaking to that, how is it, or how do you even begin to unpack playing a version of yourself? Kenya, like when you were like entering this role, what did you immediately want to like play a version of yourself? Were you thinking maybe someone else should do it? Like, how did you even just kind of enter into this as?
There were actors that we loved. We had someone in particular we loved. I think that, as big a star as she is, I would not have been able to sort of do that, because you still needed a star to make people turn the show, turn to the show. But I feel like, we hadn't seen her like this. She was a big star. There was a lot of encouragement in terms of like, let's try it. We'll figure it out. I think that the hardest part for me was, I think, trying to remember lines, which I was horrible at, but also the notion of separating, like, he's a satirical comic character. I'm saying? And some of the things he says and does, I may think about saying and doing, but I wouldn't do in real life because I'm not a complete monster. But looking that there are a lot of things that I do that people are like, oh, what an asshole. I'm like, that's actually something I really do. Like, that was a little bit hard seeing yourself, and some of the versions of yourself represented. I think that I'm really, there's a part where I'm really on Joya Rashida's character a lot. And I think that that's kind of really who I am. And I think, there's a moment where she's like, he's a lot. And I'm like, oh my God, that's probably a real statement, because I am a lot. So those moments were the hardest, sort of like seeing yourself reflected back and realizing that that's not part of the character, that's kind of who I am. And that it made me a better writer, I think. I think every actor should take an acting class, or at least one role. Every writer should take an acting class, or at least one role, because you have to realize that people actually have to do those things that you're writing on a page. And I think, sometimes she would tell me like, how is this set up? I don't understand. And I would realize that we conceived the scene that sounded right on the page, but the people have to actually perform. You know what I'm saying? And that was one of the benefits of sort of, being, working on this with another writer, is that we sort of had to reconceive a lot of scenes, especially because of the format that we shot the show in a docu style. And it helped.
And Rashida, we're going to shift to your directing. The episode you directed, the episode 3, Still Because of Slavery. And of course, the topic is a very powerful message. But how did you approach, that episode, and why was it important for you to direct?
Well, the two things that I was most interested in were, one is just starting the conversation around the adultification and sexualization of Black girls in this country. It is a deep, historically embedded stereotype, and it feels incredibly damaging and complex and intentional in the way it's just perpetuated and has been perpetuated in representation for such a long time. And, there's like a montage of all these young Black girls being restrained, whether it's at a pool party or in class in the episode. And when you see that in the context of, even just a girl just like twerking on her social page, it all of a sudden, my hope is that it would help, it would jar people into really understanding the underlying current and the themes and the things that we take for granted, in terms of the storytelling around how we treat people and how specifically how we treat Black girls. So that was the first thing. And then I think the mother part of it, like a mom who's struggling with the idea, like Kenya was saying, we have these kids, we want them to have the privilege of being free, but that doesn't mean that the world is always going to treat them that way. And so they need to have the balance of understanding the world the way it is right now, and then the world the way we want it to be. and hopefully, they can make smart choices with all that information.
Mm-hmm. And then Kenya, for episode 5, which you directed, it received a lot of attention because it dealt with, supporting Black creatives and dealing with criticism. And those are very key issues. First off, why was that important to you? And, it's very prevalent in the Black community, and also within, I'm Filipino, and in the Asian community, I think with any marginalized community, kind of supporting and criticizing, your community. I personally have I don't want to say issue with it, but I'm just, I'm torn sometimes, because you're you want to support, but at the same time, you want them to be better. So what was that episode? Why was that? Why did you think those issues were important to discuss?
I mean, I think just exactly what you just said, framed it right. We want to support, we want them to be better. I think the notion of there are certain aspects of the world that we've gotten enough presence in, if I'm talking about point guards in basketball, I can openly say, I like Allen Iverson over Steph Curry. It doesn't affect either of their careers. I'm not attacked for it. I'm not tearing down the Black point guard, I'm saying? It's something I can say, because we've gotten into that world in a way that's significant enough. But we're still sort of nascent in the film and TV, in that realm. We're still sort of kind of starting to get a little bit more, but we're still sort of nascent in it. And I feel but we are getting to the place, and I think this show is an example of it, where we need to be critical, and we need real criticism from Black and white critics. We need to be critical, but I don't think, because I think that we want to sort of be respected, and we want people to sort of see us and feel that that's real art, and it's not like we don't see ourselves, we see our stuff. But at the same time, I don't think we're at the place where we can tear down yet. So it's interesting, if Jerry Bruckheimer and Michael Bay were on a panel together, and Jerry Bruckheimer said, "Sorry, I didn't blow it up, Michael," people would laugh, and it wouldn't be an offensive shot, because they're both bosses and they both done this. I think with us sometimes we see each other's work. We have criticisms, we have thoughts, we have compliments, but we can't publicly, we haven't gotten to a place where we publicly can sort of talk about them yet, because we do sort of, is it sort of tearing down? Is it sort of going against the Black, or do we need to? And so it's this sort of push and pull. And there was a great article in the New York Times, I think Wesley Morris wrote it.
From they host that podcast, right?
Yeah. Still processing.
And he wrote it. Yeah, still processing. And but he wrote a great article about sort of just exactly this. And I think it was an interesting thing to sort of explore, particularly for the show, because I constantly, and I'm sure Rashida feels it too, as a creator, you're like, am I getting this call because I'm Black? You know what I'm saying? Or am I, are people not calling me because I'm Black? You know what I'm saying? Or, am I only going to get to do these types of projects? Should I only do these types of projects? We have so many dualities that we have to ride two horses on constantly, and it's interesting. I think we're finally at the place now where we're like, no, I want to do this. And I'm not, there's no other thing behind my back that I'm not hiding. I actually want to do these projects, but I want to do them in a different way. And if you do them in a different way, does it offend people? Because there's so few of us that when we do a story, we have to sort of be the panacea. We have to answer everybody's story issues. You know what I'm saying? We have to kind of present, even though we want to keep saying we're not monolithic, people expect when our stories come out to have everybody's version of what that particular story is in that one example. And it's a very complicated relationship, and love with our audience, but it's a complicated relationship.
It's so true about, kind of watching being a minority or being an underrepresented voice and watching another community who is also underrepresented. You mentioned, when I grew up, I did not see people that looked like me, obviously. So I naturally gravitated towards, this person has brown skin. I grew up on A Different World, Cosby Show, Martin, Living Single. I watched all of that because that was the closest thing I saw of me.
Yeah.
And that's also why Goonies, well, one of the reasons why Goonies is one of my favorite movies of all time is because he was the only Asian like that I've seen. And I was like, wow, we could do that? Like, you know, but it's just so interesting how these dynamics are working, and who knows what will happen after the other side of this pandemic. And now there have been conversations, like I remember seeing an article, a headline that said, how is the pandemic going to affect diversity in Hollywood? And I was all, that's kind of a stupid headline. But then I thought about it and I was all, maybe it might have an impact. Do you guys think that this moment in time, pandemic, social uprising, how do you think this will affect, you know, entertainment once we get through all this mess?
Well, I think we're seeing a lot of the cosmetic repercussions, i.e. people stepping down from voicing, you know, characters of color, and, you know, movies getting called out for being racist and taken off platforms and stuff. That's all fine or whatever, but like there needs to be creation of content. Like just backtracking and everybody feeling ashamed of our history is not enough. Like you know, I think one of the targets of the show was to show something different for Black people. Yeah. Like you've never seen like a kind of depraved, morally compromised, new money Black family on TV. You just haven't seen that. So it's part of many pieces of the puzzle that need to go into like eventually not having any reason to decide what a Black person is supposed to be like because of the media stereotypes. So if we can do that times 50, then we have a shot of it not being an issue anymore. I mean, the whole point of representation is so that it creates less issues and less discrimination in the world, you know, as a reflection or as an aspiration. So I do think it's possible, but I think pressure needs to be applied. Kenya, did you read that piece that Lena wrote about the mandates?
Yes, it was crazy.
It's great, but she's right. I mean, if you look at the history of this country, it's not like people are like, oh, you know what, we really messed up with slavery, let's fix it. You know what, we really messed up with segregation, let's fix it. There was legislation, there was a pressure, there was policy, and there was shame, like things that made people feel like it was not okay to believe in Jim Crow, you know? Like, you can't just expect everybody to wake up all at once and be generous with their everything.
That's interculturally as well. You know what I'm saying? Like we received a lot of flack. You know, people were like, well, you did a Juneteenth episode on Blackish. Why'd you do it again? I would do it 5 more times if I had 5 more series to do because.
How many July 4th episodes are there of what shows? A lot.
Every season we had to do a Halloween episode on Blackish. You know what I'm saying? It's like but the idea of what it's like to be Black in America is not a singular show, a season, one show, one conversation, or any group, you know, explaining
one look,
you know what I'm saying, it is something that needs to be a conversation. I feel like the notion of how we can actually have mandates and start to actually make actual change. I looked at this year, Juneteenth, people sort of took note to it. You know what I'm saying? We're lucky that Donald Trump brought it up and made it famous, but like people sort of took note to it. And I feel like the idea of like, why should that not be a paid holiday? Why should that not be something that, you know, this country was built on the free labor of an oppressed, stolen people. You know what I'm saying? Why should their last official day of slavery not be celebrated? Of course it should be. And I feel like the idea of having those conversations when you have people within your own culture is like, we're tired of, I feel like we have to sort of keep pushing through and keep having conversations. It's weird when Rashida talks, she's so smart. It reminds me of, I feel like Ben Affleck behind Matt Damon in Good Will Hunting. Where I want to be like, that's my, like, I feel like I'm the townie. I feel like I'm the townie and like he's just going to explain like a complicated.
You're like the hype man.
Like, yeah. He's just going to explain like a complicated economic concept, and I'm just like, how you like them apples? Like I just feel like,
What she said. What she said. Yeah. And then like final question, you know, coming back to Black AF, you know, I don't know how far along are you in the second season? What can we expect in terms of characters? How much more are you gonna push the envelope when it comes to more stories and character development? What can we expect? You could just tell us everything too if you want.
I don't think me and Rashida have talked about it a little bit. I will say we don't know. I've been asking, and we definitely have talked about doing some things meta that sort of talk about the reception of the show. I think that would be really, really, really interesting because I think that's something, you know, in a way we don't really know, but we know there's some things we want to explore. But I don't know. I mean, Rashida,
we're also we're not gonna push any less. I mean, that's what we've agreed upon. Yeah. I think what we both feel like is this is the time to push. And it's okay if you don't like it. Like, did you have a conversation you wouldn't have otherwise because of the way you feel about it? Great, you know?
And I think that's one of the things one of my idols, Malcolm Gladwell, said something nice about the show. And in his sort of explanation of the show, he was talking about criticism of the show, and he said, the idea of art changing my life in any way, shape, or form is all I want to be a part of. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's what Rashida's talking about is like it or not, did it cause an effect? Did it make an emotional impact on you? And I think that's what we want to do. And I think that's the pushing that we want to try to do. Like the idea of this kind of family not having been seen before is really important. And how do we now explore the impact coming out of where we're at right now? You know what I'm saying? In as prescient a way as we can, you know, because we are sort of a show that banks, and we were really lucky that it sort of worked out. But we want to sort of like, how do we create evergreen stories, but that are also prescient, but that also say something, but we're not trying to do it for any other cause other than we think it's important to talk about.
Well, no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure.
That's a lot of goals.
But Kenya and Rashida, thank you so much for this conversation. It was fun. I could actually just I could talk about this for hours. I could talk about the Kingmaker for hours, but we have to go. We all have lives to lead.
I have so many places to
I haven't eaten today yet. I haven't eaten yet today. Yeah, we have so many places. I have to get to my next meeting. But thank you all so much, and congratulations.
Thank you, Dino. Thank you. It was so nice to talk to you.
Thank you.